On today's episode, I'm going to be replacing this gloss black trim piece in my Audi S3 with this one that I got from Carbon Fabrik. Let's go ahead and see what it's going to take to get this installed. This is a Carbon Fabrik shift frame, meant for the 8Y generation of Audis. It fits the A3, S3, and RS3. And in my opinion, this is what should have come on the car from the factory. Now, if you're a fan of the channel, you'll already know my track record with working on the interior bits of a car. Let's just say hopefully I won't need a hacksaw today. Let's take a quick look and see what we need in order to get this installed. The tools you'll need are as follows. You'll need a pry tool, a T25 screwdriver, some patience, and a lot of bravery. The reason I'm replacing this is with it being a glossy surface, it looks fine. Even on video here from a distance, it looks fine when it's clean, but keeping it clean is a pain in the butt. And after about 5 minutes, anybody who has any kind of glossy trim in their car knows you have fingerprints, smudges, all kinds of dirt and dust just settle on it and it looks bad. So not a necessary upgrade, but just something fun. It should be easy, but it won't be. I'm gonna guess that this is gonna be one of the toughest jobs I have ever done. And with that ominous foreshadowing out of the way, let's get into the project. Step 1, we need to remove the center console unit. That means the entire gear selector, ignition switch for the car, and the volume controls for the radio. I was under the impression I could just pull the plastic piece off and put the new one on, but it was not that easy. There's 4 screws underneath that's holding it all together. In order to get the whole unit out, I dug my fingers into a small notch on the top of the unit, and I was able to pull the entire center console unit straight up, and that unclipped the top. Once the top was unclipped, I could push it up toward the front of the car and get a fraction of an inch in there where I could put the pry tool for some leverage to pop the bottom half of the unit out. It took a lot of force, it was scary, and I struggled for a long time before it came free. Also, don't be afraid when your ignition switch and your volume controls fall through the holes. At one point when I couldn't figure out how to get the trim off, I about gave up on the project and thought about living with my car and my start-stop button being at a 45-degree angle. Step 2, we need to remove all of the screws from the underside of the trim. Now, in some of the instructions that Carbon Fabrik provides, they show where they're disconnecting the electrical connections from underneath. In my previous experience with Volkswagens, the electrical connections can be really tricky to disconnect. And I didn't know if it would be okay to disconnect these things while the car still had power. And contemplating disconnecting the battery in order to disconnect this unit, it just seemed like a lot of extra work. So I took a shot and tried to do this without disconnecting anything. So I flipped the center console bit up, and this is where I was running into problems. So 4 screws hold this plastic plate on, including clips. I have no idea why, but they did it that way. Audi! Once I figured that out, I just used this socket wrench with a T25 bit on it to take the 4 screws out. If you don't have one, it'd probably be better to use a screwdriver that has a T25 than this, but I didn't have one handy. Step 3, remove the original trim. So the clips at the top of this trim piece, they come apart pretty easily. The bottom ones stick a little bit more firmly, but with a little bit of effort and working on it, I was able to get these to pop free as well. Once the original trim piece is off, go ahead and push the ignition switch and the volume controls down through that hole. It's easier when you go to put the new trim piece on not to have those in the way. Step 4, install the new trim. Now that the original trim is out, I'm able to push these buttons and the ignition switch down through, and I can clear the way for the new frame. I line up the Carbon Fabrik frame, and I start from the bottom, get those clips in, and work my way to the top. I got stuck at the top for a little bit, but putting a little pressure on each corner did the trick. Now that it's installed, I'm able to push in the ignition switch and the volume controls and make sure that they're lined up and straight and even. Once they were clipped in, the last step is just to put the 4 screws back in the bottom. Once all 4 screws are tightened down, I'm able to take the entire unit, put it into place, and then with some force on the bottom, I work my way back up to the top and got everything clipped back into place. And it looks as good as new, actually even better. As for my final impressions, I think it looks amazing. I'm not sure why Audi didn't just do this from the factory. The part that Carbon Fabrik built is just a higher quality piece than the plastic trim piece that came with the car. Hopefully you found this video helpful and entertaining, and if you did, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks again for watching.